Welcome to this introduction to the Manitou Neo Enhanced Action Patterns. This Enhanced Action Patterns introduction introduces you to the new Action Patterns interface in Manitou Neo and how to analyze, prepare, and apply 3 Enhanced Action Pattern scenarios. Enhanced Action Patterns offer significantly more power to Manitou Neo. Many sites utilize the workflow functionality and will recognize some similar features. Enhanced Action Patterns went a step further by adding the ability to build logic items and use SQL queries to test values in the database for a count or true-false value. With this additional power is an additional level of complexity that may be initially beyond some end-user skill level. Not to worry. Bold and the Bold user community will build a library of some standard actions that will be added to our user seed database and pulled into existing systems for use. For sites that already have people on the team with Microsoft SQL query knowledge and an understanding of the Manitou database schema, they will already be able to hit the ground running with Enhanced Action Patterns. Include commands have changed in Manitou Neo. For sites currently using these, your upgrade converts these for you. Additional tutorials will step through these new behaviors. During this tutorial, we will introduce you to the following within Manitou Neo. We will identify a business case. We will build a flow based on that case. We will build an action pattern based on that flow, and we will test the results. Before we get started, let's get to know a bit about the look and feel of the new action pattern interface of Manitou Neo. After logging into Manitou Neo, the action patterns are found still in the same 3 locations, within the customer, dealer, and monitoring company records. During this course, we will create our action patterns within the monitoring company record. This is found under the Maintenance menu, then Monitoring Company Record. Given the new power of action patterns in Manitou Neo, we now strongly encourage the use of action pattern categories to help organize them in logical groups. This will allow you to collapse and expand sections for ease of viewing. Manitou Neo reverses the grouping as you step into the different entities to keep the current entity action patterns at the top. In the monitoring company actions are at the top of the tree. When you enter a dealer's action patterns, the dealer actions are on the top of the tree, and when you enter a customer's actions, the customer's actions are at the top of the tree. Now, Manitou Neo offers clear text masking of actions so operators can read simple instructions as opposed to more technical language. This is what displays to operators when they receive an alarm. Manitou Neo now groups action patterns into subgroups based on what you need to do when creating action patterns. Alarm handling contains the items specific to processing the alarm. New to Manitou Neo, defer can be directly added to the action pattern. There are supplemental quick reference guides available that define all these commands and their use. Entity handling is for contacting, notifying, or reporting to specific persons or entities as actions. Action handling starts some of the workflow and new enhanced features. These allow the ability to build a label, include an action pattern, set a wait period, and jump to a location. Data handling includes all the items like show, logline, remark, as well as the new launch feature for external application, URL, validate password, and customer search plus prompt and set for new variables. External handling contains the send and connect features that utilize reverse commands to reach out and connect to items. Finally, logic handling contains all the items that allow decisions and queries to work in the actions. All existing Manitou sites updating from legacy Manitou to Manitou Neo receive access to the Enhanced Action Patterns features. Now that we have a bit of familiarity with the new look and feel of the action patterns inside Manitou Neo, let's look at 3 scenarios and how to build enhanced action patterns to meet the needs. Case 1. Only call at night. A customer calls the monitoring center frustrated. They are tired of getting calls, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day, that their burglary zone has gone into trouble. They would like to stop getting these calls during the day. They simply would like to get an email to their business email address for that zone when it goes into trouble during their regular business hours, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., Monday through Saturday. After those hours, when there's no one there to fix the problem, They would like to get phone calls so that they can get someone to go in and fix and correct the issue. Based on this customer issue, what are the key pieces the customer wants? 1. If the hours are between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., they only want an email, and then they want us to close the alarm. 2. Outside of those hours, they want to be notified, contact customer key holder, to send someone out to fix the issue, and then close the alarm. So what are the elements needed? A general schedule for the action pattern, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. If you were to draw a flow chart of this, what would it look like? Now that we know what is necessary, how do we build the action pattern? Since we want to build this for multiple customers, we are building this on the monitoring company record, and we will have general information about some information. This action pattern relies on a general schedule. Therefore, we must create an action pattern general schedule before we can create our action pattern. It is possible to create this general schedule on the monitoring company record. This general schedule will also need to be created on the individual customer records with the exact same ID in order for it to properly catch when the action pattern runs. The details within the general schedule do not have to match the details within the monitoring company general schedule. Once created, save the monitoring company record so the general schedule is available for the action pattern creation. Next, we add the action pattern. We add the action pattern by clicking the plus sign on the action pattern tree. There we give it an ID, description, select under which category it will reside. After its creation, remember if you don't have the action pattern categories, it will go to default, then click Next. The action pattern edit form loads. The first step in our decision from our flow, if inside the schedule, we select logic handling and pick the if selection, and pick general schedule at alarm time, then pick the general schedule we created. Notice the not checkbox. If you want the schedule when it's not true, then do something, you can select the box. In this scenario, we want it when it is in force. When the fields are correctly selected, click Apply. This adds the value to the left-hand side of the view. Now it is time to determine what to do if the schedule time is true. Remember in our story, our customer wants to just email them with a notification that the alarm tripped and closed the alarm. So the first thing to do is pick the entity handling and say Notify, and here we pick the customer email using a notification script. Once all items are set as desired, click Apply to add it to the action pattern. The next step is to close the alarm. Since this is an automatic action, we can add that to the alarm handling commands for close and give it a resolution code. Based on our flow, if an alarm is not within the schedule, the customer asks that we want to contact the key holders and then close the alarm. So we have to add an else, which is back in the logic section, and then we need to add a contact action. The difference between notify and contact is that the notify action does not expect a response, while a contact action assumes a two-way conversation, whether it's via telephone, text message, or other communication pathway. In order to complete a logic statement, there must be an end if so the system knows that it has reached the end. So back in the logic handling section, we add end if. Once all items are in place, the action pattern is ready to use. Click Done and then save the record. Remember, it is possible to mask action items to simplify how an operator reads these when handling an alarm. No action pattern is complete until it is tested. What has to be done to test this? 1. The customer record has to have an action pattern general schedule with the same ID as the general schedule on the monitoring company record. 2. The event code has to have the action pattern tied to it. Where it is tied doesn't specifically matter as long as it is overridden at a more specific level. For this test, we will specifically tie it to an event on this customer. And 3. The schedule should be valid at the time of the signal to test the positive path, then not valid to test the negative path. Did everything work? Did you see both the in-schedule and out-of-schedule actions? If it did not, did you confirm you had the correct action pattern? Was your general schedule ID correct? When you have successfully tested your solution, it is ready to deliver. Case 2, Joe's Grocery. Joe's Grocery monitors the refrigeration system, but they are serviced by a separate company, through which they submit a web form. After submission of the form, they must await notification that the service request is accepted. Once accepted, they may close the alarm. If not accepted, they must wait 5 minutes and try 3 more times, then submit a new request if not accepted. Based on the customer issue, what are the key pieces the customer wants? 1. Launch a URL for the creation of a service ticket. 2. Verify the service ticket was accepted. 3. If not accepted. 4. Set a counter. 5. Determine if the counter is greater or equal to 3. 6. If greater or equal to 3, create a new service ticket, then go back to 2. So what are the elements needed? We need a URL. What would a flowchart look like for this scenario? Now that we know what is necessary, how do we build this action pattern? In this scenario, the monitoring center is the grocery store chain, so they are going to do this for the majority of their accounts. So once again, they are able to build this on their monitoring company record. We add the action pattern by clicking the plus sign on the tree, giving it a name and description, selecting its category, and then clicking Next. On the action pattern edit dialog, the first item to do is to launch the service ticket web page. We do this by selecting the data handling section and selecting Launch, then selecting URL. We paste the web page address into the base URL field. Notice there are some additional parameters that when available, the web address can receive that additional information. It can be added and included in the URL. When the URL is correct, click Apply to place it on the left-hand side. The next item is to suspend the event for the first 5-minute waiting period. That is under the Alarm Handling section. There you can select Suspend and set the period to 5 minutes and even set the priority to a lower priority and then click Apply. In order to start the counter and loop, we have to start building the hooks and labels. So the first thing we want to do is set the counter and start it at 0. We do this by going to the Data Handling section and then selecting Set. We need to call it Counter. When we do this, it automatically gets an @ symbol added to it. Notice it forces it to all caps as well. We set its value to 0 and then click Apply. This means that the next time we add a count to it, it will increment from there. Next, we need to add a label so the signal handler knows where to go when it loops back up under the Action Handling section. Here, we call it Check State. This too is forced to all caps. The actual name can be anything your organization wants to call it. Just be sure that it makes sense and it's logical for your practices. Here, we have a few options on how we want to handle the logic. We could increment our counter before we check the state, or we can check the state and then increment our counter. For this example, we're going to check the service ticket state and then increment our counter. So we need to view our URL again. Do you remember under which section the launch action is? That's right, the data handling section. Now it is time to increment the counter to 1. So we go back to the data handling section, set the counter plus 1. Now it is time to ask the question, was the service request accepted? We do this through a prompt. Prompt is found under the data handling section as well. We give the variable a name. The name should be all one word and it will be forced to all caps. In this example, we call it accepted. Then we want to assign it 2 values, yes and no. So we pick the type of list and then enter the question we want the operator to read. These values are separated by a vertical pipe. This is found just above the Enter key in most North American keyboards. We want these values to be logged to activity, so we need to insert that data into the activity log through a log action. That is underneath the data handling section. Next, we get into the logic part. If the service request is accepted, all is right with the world and the alarm may be closed. If it is not yet accepted, the operator must continue to wait for acceptance until the counter reaches 3, where they must enter a new service ticket. So we start our if statement, and that is under the logic handling section. The logic handling section has the if things are accepted and when they are not, and then when things happen more than 3 times. The first if is when the service request is accepted, then we can simply close the alarm with a resolution code. The else for that if is if the counter is less than 3. Then we can put it on hold for another 5 minutes and then go back to the top, look again if the request is accepted, increment the counter, and prompt the operator to see. All logic statements have to close with an end if, so since we had two if statements, we have to close with two end if statements. Since an operator cannot close an alarm unless the service ticket is accepted, we created a new label at the very top of the action pattern and a jump to at the bottom so that if the loop should reach the end of the count and the service ticket has not been accepted, they would have to start again from the top. As before, no action pattern is complete until tested. So what has to be done to test this? The customer record has to have an event tied to this action pattern. It is possible to tie the global action pattern to the global event code as well. In this scenario, where the business does this nearly for all their accounts, this would be the recommended way to do this. 2, you must test the happy path, where everything works as expected, and the path where all items fail. So, did everything work? Did the loop stop after 3? Did the operator get kicked to the top of the action pattern when everything failed and start again? When all items work as expected, the action pattern is ready. Case 3, Video Monitoring. A small monitoring company receives clip-based video, and when the video arrives, operators are instructed to review the video, and they want them to observe the video for signs of threatening situations. Then they must do one of 3 things. If there is a clear sign of threat, dispatch the police immediately. If there's no sign of any threat, such as an animal or bug, simply close the alarm. Or if they're unsure, go to additional video sources such as a live video feed or DVR to review for more information. Often operators are making incorrect decisions or taking too long to make a decision. They would like to prompt the operators to help them make better decisions in a more timely fashion. Based on the customer issue, what are the key pieces the customer wants? 1. Review the clip video. 2. Make decisions through a prompt. And 3. View additional video as necessary. So what are the elements needed? View video, prompt, and make a decision. If one was to draw a flowchart, what would that flowchart look like? Now that we know what is necessary, how do we build this action pattern? Since most video events tied to specific devices, the action pattern would most likely be customer specific. However, it is possible to build a general outline action pattern on the monitoring company record and use that to copy onto customer records where specific devices can be defined. This creates a quality standard and prevents common errors from simple typos. Therefore, we will create this action pattern here on the monitoring company record. The first action required is to connect to a video piece. While each account might be different, we want to have a placeholder in place for reference, so we add a connect element under the external handling section. Once the operator has had the opportunity to view the video, we want them to describe what they saw. So we prompt them with a question with 3 answers. The prompt is found under the data handling section, and we ask the question, is there a visible threat? And we offer them a list of 3 possible answers: yes, no, and unsure. On the mask, we added words before the answers separated with a semicolon so that when we insert the information into the log line, the sentence makes clear sense. In this example, we entered A, semicolon, yes, vertical pipe, no, semicolon, no, vertical pipe, undetermined, semicolon, unsure. In order to track the response, we next add a log line and select the auto run so the operator doesn't have to manually launch the line after they've selected their answer. The log line is written as a clear plain text sentence. Here we wrote operator observed @C threat. The @C will complete with the word before the semicolon. Therefore, if the operator selected yes on the prompt, the log line inserts to the history as the operator observed a threat. Based on the answer, there are 3 possible pathways to follow. Here we get into the logic. In this scenario, we need to build a select and case statement. The select statement is looking at the answers of the @C prompt. Next, we have to establish each case. The first case is when the answer is yes. When the answer is yes, they want the operator to immediately dial the police authority and notify them of the alarm and what they saw on the video. Then they would continue to make notifications following their standard operating procedure. The second case is when the answer is no. Then they are simply prompted to close the alarm. The third case, or the otherwise, is when the answer is unsure. They're expected to connect to other video devices where they receive an additional prompt asking if there are any threats found based on the additional video observations. This additional prompt only has 2 questions to answer, and an additional if statement if there are additional threats. When there is an additional threat, it prompts them to return to the Notify Police section of the first case. If not, they simply can close the alarm. Like if statements need an end if, select statements need an end select. As before, no action pattern is complete until it is tested. What has to be done to test this? 1. The customer record has to have an event tied to this action pattern. It is possible to tie the global action pattern to the global event code as well. In this scenario, where the business does this for nearly all their accounts, this would be the recommended way to do this. And 2, you must test the happy path where everything works as expected, and the path where all items fail. So, did everything work? Did the log line show correctly for each path? Did the lines marked for auto run automatically? And did the jump to line jump correctly? When everything works as expected, the action pattern is ready for delivery. Thank you for taking the time to learn a bit about Manitou Neo Enhanced Action Patterns. During this tutorial, we introduced to you the following within Manitou Neo: the new Action Patterns interface, 3 cases where you can apply enhanced action patterns where we identified business case needs, built a flow of that case, built action patterns based on that flow, and tested the results. What other scenarios do you have? What customer and business cases come to mind now that you've reviewed these cases? Do you want to try your hand at building enhanced action patterns? You can. Just follow the link and register to log into our site. There you can build your own account and action patterns and test them as much as you would like. Thanks so much for your time and attention. We look forward to seeing what you come up with. Please feel free to email your suggestions and ideas to boldgeniussupport@boldgroup.com.